For thousands of years, the pyramids of Egypt and the ziggurats of Mesopotamia have stood as history's unwavering prologue. They represented the dawn of kings, the birth of wealth, and the first undeniable evidence of sophisticated civilization. We were told this story began around 3000 BC. But what if the story began 2,000 years earlier? What if the concept of pure, ostentatious wealth, the very idea of gold as a symbol of eternal, absolute power, was invented not on the sands of the Nile, but on the Black Sea coast of modern-day Bulgaria? This is the story of the Varna Necropolis, a discovery so profound it forced archaeologists to tear up the first chapters of human history. In the summer of 1972, in the bustling industrial city of Varna, a young excavator named Rachel Marinov was digging a routine utility trench. His shovel struck something hard, something metallic. He unearthed a handful of gold artifacts, small, perfectly crafted objects, unlike anything seen before. What he had stumbled upon was not just a hoard, but the braves of a long-vanished people who lived nearly 7 millennia ago. A people who had mastered metallurgy, and in doing so, they had invented the concept of status. They created the world's oldest processed gold, and in their pursuit of immortal wealth, they may have sown the seeds of their own mysterious destruction. This is a journey to a prehistoric society that was, in every sense of the word, ahead of its time. Rachel Marinov's initial find quickly evolved into a massive archaeological operation. What lay beneath the unassuming port city of Varna was an entire city of the dead, a vast Chalcolithic cemetery dating back to 4600 to 4200 BC. This was the Copper Age, an era we usually associate with simple agricultural communities. Yet, the Varna people were anything but simple. Over the next 2 decades, archaeologists excavated more than 300 graves, and the results were stunning, revealing an extreme and dramatic stratification of society. The graves fell into 3 distinct categories, painting a complex portrait of prehistoric life and, crucially, death. The first type was the rich burial. These contained actual human remains, often male, interred with an extraordinary array of status objects. They were clearly individuals of high social standing, buried with their physical wealth. The second type was the most mysterious, the symbolic graves, or cenotaphs. They were empty, no human bones, but they were lavishly appointed, often containing the single largest concentrations of gold. In place of a body, archaeologists found a stylized clay mask representing a human face, sometimes accompanied by gold jewelry, positioned where the hands, head, or legs would have been. These graves suggest a profound spiritual or ritual function, possibly reserved for individuals who died far from home, or perhaps the symbolic interment of a deity or cultural hero. These were burials not just of people, but of abstract power. The third type comprised the simple burials, the vast majority. These contained a body, maybe a few basic pottery vessels, and little to no gold. They were the farmers, the laborers, the essential foundation of the Varna community. The sheer discrepancy between these graves, from the gold-laden cenotaphs to the humble earthen pits, is archaeological proof of a highly stratified society, a caste system of haves and have-nots existing 2,000 years before the first pharaoh was entombed. Varna was perfectly positioned for this wealth explosion. Situated strategically on the western shore of the Black Sea, it wasn't just a village, it was a nexus. It sat near the primary source of copper in Europe, the massive mines in the Balkan Mountains. Varna was the gateway for raw materials, controlling the trade routes for metals that were quickly becoming the core of the ancient world's economy. It was a prehistoric Wall Street, and the dead were its first great shareholders.
Among the 300-plus graves, one stood out as the absolute pinnacle of prehistoric opulence, Grave 43. When archaeologists, led by Ivan Ivanov, opened this grave, they found the remains of a man, likely in his late 40s, lying on his back, hands clutching a ceremonial scepter. This was not a chief or a clan elder. This was a king, a high priest, or an unparalleled warlord. The contents of Grave 43 confirmed his status. The tomb held over 990 individual gold objects, weighing a combined 1.5 kilograms. For context, this single grave contained more gold than has been found in all of the rest of the world's contemporaneous Copper Age finds combined. Let's detail the inventory. The most striking piece was the gold scepter, likely a ceremonial battle axe or mace. Unlike weapons designed for combat, this was made purely of gold, unsuited for battle, but perfect for signaling absolute authority. It was the visual language of command, established in 4500 BC. Around his neck were heavy gold necklaces, and on his wrists, thick bracelets. But the most unexpected finds were found lower down. The body was interred with a massive gold diadem, a complex, stylized crown that would have marked him instantly as divine or divinely chosen. Most controversially, the grave contained precisely modeled gold sheaths, artifacts that appear to have been decorative coverings for the deceased's phallus. These items underline the hyper-masculine, ritualistic power structures of the Varna society. The king of Varna was not just wealthy, he was the embodiment of fertility and dominance. Finally, we find the giant flint blades. Measuring nearly 45 centimeters long, these beautifully flaked blades, far too fragile for everyday use, were ceremonial tools. Their presence underscores the dual nature of Varna power. The ultimate authority was held by a man who commanded both the physical world, represented by the rare and highly traded flint, and the economic world, represented by the gold. Varna was a testament to the birth of organized, state-level power.
The gold is impressive, but the technology behind it is what truly baffles experts. How did a culture in 4500 BC achieve such metallurgical finesse? The Varna people were products of the Chalcolithic period, meaning they were already highly skilled in copper, chalcos working. Their ability to locate, mine, and smelt copper ore was the industrial engine of their society. They traded copper far and wide across Europe, using the massive profits to consolidate power and acquire luxury items. But gold is different. Gold cannot be smelted like copper. It does not occur in large seams of ore. The Varna people utilized placer deposits, small flakes and nuggets of naturally occurring gold found in riverbeds. The objects they created, like the intricately detailed gold discs and beads, were not cast from molten gold, like later Roman or Greek artifacts. They were meticulously cold-hammered. Imagine the skill required. A goldsmith would take a tiny rough nugget and, with a precision no less than that of a modern jeweler, repeatedly hammer it with stone tools. This process, known as cold forging, requires immense patience, control, and knowledge of the metal's crystalline structure to prevent it from cracking or crumbling. The sheer uniformity and purity approaching 23.5 carats of the Varna gold pieces is a silent scream of their forgotten genius. The Varna people didn't just hoard their local metals, they ran an extraordinary intercontinental trade network. The spondylus shell bracelets, a hallmark of the Varna culture, came from the Aegean Sea, hundreds of miles away. They imported rare obsidian for tools and beautiful high-quality flint from a northern source, the material used for the king's ceremonial blades. The wealth of Varna was thus twofold. It was a primary producer of copper and a central hub for the movement of luxury goods. They controlled the supply of the era's primary industrial metal and became the world's first super traders, exchanging industrial might for symbolic wealth. The entire system rested on an unquestioned truth. Varna was the master of metal. The Varna gold is often called the King Tut treasure of the Copper Age, but that comparison misses the most critical point. Tutankhamun's gold was a product of an existing, millennium-old dynastic system. The Varna gold was the invention of the system itself. Let's return to the concept of value. Copper was utilitarian. You could make tools, axes, and arrowheads. It directly improved survival. But the Varna gold was almost entirely non-utilitarian. You cannot farm with a gold scepter. You cannot build a house with a gold phallus sheath. Its only function was to signify status, to create a visible, undeniable chasm between the elite and the masses. This is the central revelation of the Varna Necropolis. This culture was the first to realize that wealth could be separated from utility. They were the first to understand that the highest form of power is not rooted in what you do, but in what you possess. The contrast between the graves is the starkest proof of this social stratification. Grave 43 and the high-status cenotaphs are surrounded by over 300 other burials, most of which are bare. The gap between the richest 1% and the remaining 99% was already astronomical in 4500 BC. The structure suggests that status was becoming hereditary. The king's gold was not something he simply earned, it was something he was born to command. This meant the social ladder was rigid, unmovable, and backed by ritual and religious symbolism. Gold became the medium for communicating with the divine, making the elite the direct intermediaries to the gods. The massive gold-laden cenotaphs, the empty graves, only reinforce this idea. These weren't just graves, they were altars to a power structure that transcended life and death. The Varna culture invented the world's first great economic machine, and in so doing, they invented poverty and inherited wealth. They created the first true, class system in history.
Here is where the history turns to mystery. After 2 centuries of unprecedented prosperity, metallurgical dominance, and centralized power, the entire Varna culture suddenly and completely vanished around 4200 BC. The great trade network crumbled. The sophisticated gold-working disappeared. The advanced copper mines went silent. It wasn't a slow decline. It was an abrupt, archaeological blackout. What could cause a civilization that had mastered wealth and metal to vanish so completely? Archaeologists have focused on 2 primary theories, and they may be inextricably linked. Theory 1, climate catastrophe. A body of evidence suggests that the late Chalcolithic period was marked by a severe, prolonged drought across the Black Sea and Balkan regions. The farmlands would have withered, key waterways would have dried up, and the agricultural base that supported the metalworking elite would have failed. Famine would have quickly followed. Theory 2, internal and external pressures. The sudden wealth of Varna made it a target. The collapse coincides with the arrival of new, more mobile groups of people, likely nomadic tribes from the Eurasian steppe. These people were pastoralists, skilled in warfare, and accustomed to survival in harsh environments. They migrated south, finding a rich, settled, and perhaps socially fragile society ripe for disruption. But the most compelling argument links the collapse back to Varna's greatest invention, inequality. A society where one man is buried with 1.5 kilograms of pure gold, while his neighbors have nothing, is inherently unstable when resources fail. When drought hit, the farmers and laborers who kept the entire system running would have looked at the opulent tombs of the elite, tombs full of useless, beautiful metal, and the social contract would have shattered. Did the masses revolt against the gold-hoarding elite? Did the king's accumulated wealth prove to be a liability, inviting both internal and external enemies? We may never know for sure. But the fate of Varna serves as a powerful 6,700-year-old warning. The moment humanity invented wealth, they also created the most potent tool for self-destruction. The Varna gold is not just the world's oldest treasure. It is a time capsule of a fatal social experiment. It is the beginning of the story of civilization, and perhaps the first chapter on how civilizations end.
The deep, authoritative, and slightly dramatic tone. The Varna Necropolis lies buried once more, the story of its gold preserved for all time. What lesson do you take from the King of Varna? Let us know in the comments below. If you're fascinated by forgotten history and the secrets hidden beneath our feet, be sure to subscribe. Thank you for watching.